Welcome to America's Heroes Group.
And welcome to America's Heroes Group, Roundtable with clean energy infrastructure partner Zodiac Solutions, LLC. Today is Saturday, November the 6th, 2021. And this Thursday coming up, we got 4 days in the wake up to Veterans Day, November the 11th. November is also the Military Family Appreciations and Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month. My name is Sean Claiborne. Our host is Cliff Kelley. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And today we have a great show. We have with us today Mr. Rob Howard, our partner, and also a U.S. Navy veteran and president and CEO of Zodiac Solutions, LLC. How you doing, gentlemen?
We are doing great. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. Also, we have another panelist, Douglas Applegate, Esquire, Iraq retired colonel of the U.S. Marines, and also trial lawyer specializing in civil and criminal litigation here in the United States, Asia, the Middle East, and South America. And we have a very good thing to talk about today. We have something that's very wonderful that's going on, and that is some new changes as far as what we talk about when we say bad paper. We're going to explain what bad paper is in a minute, and also talk about what the Navy is doing to redress some of the bad paper that's out there. We're talking about veterans who were receiving less than or other than honorable discharges. So, Mr. Howard, can you lead us off and give us some information as to what happened recently, and what is the Navy doing to address some of the other than honorable discharges that Navy veterans have received?
Well, first of all, I wanted to first start by, I know people were saying, well, these are clean energy guys. Why do they care about the veteran papers? And as you know, a lot of things are going to change in the job market. And one of the things we wanted to make sure is that people with skills who served, they served us. It is our responsibility to ensure that we're doing everything we can to help them in the transition. And one of the things that we find as you're looking at employees that's blocking that is the bad paper. So I said, wait a minute. I want employees for this green energy economy, but we need to take care of our veterans in the process. And so that's why I brought Colonel Applegate on, because this whole situation, the more I was hearing about it, it just troubled me, because it just didn't work as I thought it should work when it comes to taking care of folks. So I brought Colonel Applegate to talk about the fact that now we have an opportunity to fix some of the problems with the bad paper.
Now, Colonel, tell us about bad paper. First, explain what that is for our civilian community. And then also, we touched on the idea that when you have bad paper, that actually can prevent you from getting a good job when you get out of the military. So explain to us what bad paper is and what's changing now with the Navy.
Well, it's going to change across the board, but right now the Navy's the first in the kill zone, so to speak, because when you get discharged, for the civilian audience, you're going to either get, hopefully, an honorable discharge, which gives you all the benefits as an American veteran. That includes buying a house with no money down, medical, everything that veterans get, including things, medical coverage, beyond what you might have suffered as an injury or a condition while you're on active duty. But it's a significant right. Now, if you don't get court-martialed, you should get an honorable discharge. But there's an administrative process. An administrative process plays games with your VA rights. That's the biggest impact. A court-martial gives you a criminal conviction that shows up on the public records. But the administrative separation, it gives you either a general discharge or an OTH, and other than honorable discharge. That essentially takes away all of your VA rights. And the only thing you can go back for treatment to the VA hospitals is if you have PTS. Some organizations call it PTSD. I don't think it's a disorder. It's post-traumatic stress. And I don't want to mark that with a handicap tag. But I've been around I've been a Marine since '74. Okay, that's the title really enjoy. I don't complain when somebody does me the honor of calling me a colonel, but I'm not on active duty anymore. Nobody has to call me that. I'm just somebody that represents the little guy as an attorney. And the biggest thing that happened is from, let me get the date right, basically if you got bad paper, that's a general discharge, which sounds good, but it still takes away some of your veteran rights, or an OTH, and that happened after October 7, 2001, you get a do-over, okay? You get a do-over with some special consideration if PTS or injuries related to PTS mitigate the basis for your OTH or bad administrative discharge. Back in 2014, Chuck Hagel, who was a Vietnam vet and was an enlisted individual, I think he got out as a sergeant in the infantry, but he was SecDef under President Obama. And he issued a memo in 2014 that stated, this was already litigated once about 3 years ago, but he issued a memo in 2014 that people with PTS should get special consideration of their administrative discharge if that affected the basis for an OTH or a general. Now, just to throw on a little bit more kindling on the fire, back in my day when I was first an infantry officer, and then I was a JAG, and I was representing people, most of the time I was on the defense because I just didn't have the personality to represent the government. So I was on the defense representing sailors and Marines who got in trouble.
Okay.
I enjoyed that far more, and they always got jerked around more. So it used to be that you would get a hearing for an administrative discharge. Now, about over the last 23, 24 years, you've got to be on active duty 8 years, either 6 or 8 years, depending on the period, to get an administrative hearing. It just happens now if the command wants to do that to you. Now, you can appeal to the Navy Discharge Review Board, and the Army's got their same Discharge Review Board, as does all of the services. But you still don't get a panel of three or five officers. That you can really have a lot of officers, you can convince them to do the right thing and say, no, this individual deserves an honorable discharge. There might have been a mistake. You didn't have enough money to court, enough evidence, that's a slip of the tongue, enough money, to send them to a court martial. So now you're just trying to take the easy way out, which for years, I remember if somebody was going to, a commanding officer was going to ask for an administrative discharge, they had to have multiple counseling entries, NJPs, 1, 2, or 3, depending on the time period, before higher headquarters would even consider an administrative discharge. So you really it was more than just one mistake up through really right around 2000. Then the global war on terror started, and we needed bodies. And then when they came home, if they were suffering from the effects of PTS, they were shuffled out the back door quicker than I'd ever seen.
Wow. But
1972.
But counsel, this is the thing that gets me. So we're talking about, so people have some perspective. We're talking about, there was a report that mentioned from the Army side, and you mentioned that this is actually you're saying that the target zone or the kill zone right now is the U.S. Navy. Some of the things I read, this actually began in the United States Army. And so you're saying the Navy's moving ahead further, but you're talking about just in the United States Army, there's 50 to 100,000 people that could be affected by this. And you have people, men and women, who may have suffered military sexual trauma and had a less than or other than honorable discharge, or someone who had something that happened to them related to their post-traumatic stress, that it's actually exacerbated by enacting out. The person who brought the lawsuit was this Mr. You might remember his name here.
Manker.
Yes.
Tyson Manker.
Tyson Manker. Yes. So Tyson Manker, who brought the lawsuit, he served between 1999 and 2003, was decorated. However, he got other than honorable discharge because he was self-medicating with marijuana.
Right.
So is this do you see this process of being able to get some of these discharges upgraded? Is this going to be an easier, or is it still an uphill battle for someone who's thinking about doing this?
Well, this is the first case that's gotten this far. What they actually did was, Manker was the named plaintiff in the class action, and it's created a class for people that were in the Navy or the Marine Corps because the defendant was the Secretary of the Navy. And this has bounced around for quite some time. And it just so happens that Manker's is the first case that's gotten to this settlement, and the class has been approved. It's called you certify the class, and then there's a process in the settlement that the Navy, they had some very good lawyers working for them. It was back in Connecticut, and the Navy agreed that this is what we're going to do. You can reapply if you've asked for a review of your case and discharge, character of your discharge from the Navy Discharge Review Board. And then if it had been denied, starting in October 7, 2000, part of these are going to be automatically reviewed. And then there's another date that you're going to get a notice if you want to have it reviewed. And the filing with the court indicates there's thousands. And as you referenced, it would not surprise me if you start talking about Army administrative discharge. They're in the same boat, and there's going to be a greater number. So there's a process that I don't want to confuse anyone, but to say this, because there's different time periods. Everybody can get a second look if you got a general discharge or a OTH, other than honorable discharge, and you had PTS. That's all you need in order to get a second look. Now, a certain number of them are going to be automatically looked at. You'll get notice of it. And you could, if you want to, resubmit your package. There's no question you need to get a hold of a lawyer if you fall in that group and resubmit the package, because they're also going to do remote hearings. Before, you had to travel to Washington, where the Navy and the Army and the Air Force boards are. So that's something that you don't want to get sucked into, hey, we're going to go ahead and look at this ourselves, because that was supposed to happen since 2014, and the Navy they didn't admit, they haven't been given it special consideration if you had PTS and received one of these discharges. But they still had this settlement, which means they didn't want to go through the risk. The numbers didn't change after SecDef Hagel's memo that said, give them special consideration. The numbers remain the same. Actually, the numbers have been going up, particularly when you don't have the admin discharge boards anymore, unless you've been in it essentially over 6 years, which means if you're in your first term and your command puts you up for an administrative discharge and an OTH, that's what you've been getting.
So how does a veteran not fall through the cracks or slip through the cracks of getting their discharge overturned or upgraded? What's the first step they should be taking right now?
Well, the first thing that's going to happen is, and the court's back in Connecticut is going to review that, and I imagine that the attorneys that are representing the class now and the Navy are going to agree on how the notice is going to go out. So it's going to be electronic with the last known email. It's going to be the last known address, but they're not going to be in the VA system because they got it OTH.
Right.
Some of them will be if they went to the VA and they could still qualify for treatment of their PTSD conditions. But what is going to happen is they're talking about written notification by mail, email. Of course, once again, that database goes back to 2001, and they may or may not be good. They're also going to put up ads on social media. I'm not a big fan of Facebook, but at least it's useful to get a few things out. So what I would do, and I'm going to start doing on any of the social media that remains, although I'm trying to wean myself away from any Facebook misinformation, but I'm going to try to get the word out, and I'm going to tell everybody, if you got a bad discharge after 2001 and you think you have PTS, because it could be undiagnosed up to the present date, but if you think you have PTS and you got a bad discharge since 2001, you should get to somebody who's specializing in discharge review boards. I've done them for years. You can contact me. I'm in California, but I got an 888 number that I'm not going to give out unless you tell me to.
Go ahead and give it out.
But it's my number for my office is 888-583-2266. That's Doug Applegate.
Right, one more time, because people sometimes write slow. So
888-583-2266. That's 2266.
I appreciate that. So I think it's really important that this information gets out to the military community, because, like you said, if you have other than a honorable discharge, you're not in the VA system necessarily, so you may not get the call. I remember when Afghanistan kicked off, I got a phone call 2 months after the fact saying you're AWOL. I'm like, wait a minute, I got discharged 6 months ago. Why am I AWOL for sure? I'm going for being deployed. So you have to reach out. You have to kind of stay up. And oftentimes when we're discharged, we don't think about staying up with, we think that that's being the past. But as we mentioned earlier, it's so important to get the best possible discharge. If you get an honorable discharge, it's so important because that affects your health benefits, education benefits, the VA loan, job opportunities. All these types of things can follow you around for your rest of your life if you have anything other than an honorable discharge.
And I'm sure everybody, Rob, you, me, we understand that for generations, this has been the way you get to go to college. This has been the way you bought a house. This has been the way that you got a good job and rose up through the ranks and increase the generational wealth that you pass on to your children. And when you just make one mistake now, and you have a bad relationship with your commanding officer, you could just be gone. Mm-hmm. And so it's very important because of its special consideration, and you need to be able to document the whole case. You need to be able to set up a Zoom. They're also going to have an online database that once you can go in and check your discharge and the status of your case too.
I appreciate your time, Mr. Applegate. You were very helpful and also giving us some great information. And Mr. Howard, thanks again for bringing us some great information and also making some valid points. This is America's Heroes Group. Right before Veterans Day, 4 days in the wake up to Veterans Day. We'll be right back.